Support for this podcast and the following message come from Cyber Policy, helping protect small businesses against cyber attacks with the first end-to-end solution that combines cyber planning, security, and insurance customized for small business. Visit cyberpolicy.com for a custom quote in just 4 minutes.
Hey pals, I'm Lauren Ober, and this is a very special Hot and Sweaty August episode of The Big Listen. In 2003, Jonathan Groff was just a kid with big Broadway dreams growing up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That is until he landed in a national tour of The Sound of Music. And then in just a few short years, Groff went from high school drama geek to Tony-nominated actor for his role in the hit show Spring Awakening. From there, Groff's star ascended, like at breakneck pace. He nabbed a role on the TV show Glee, and he performed the voice of Kristoff in Disney's blockbuster movie Frozen. Oh, ready? Let it go, let it go. You hold me back, something from the snow. You're welcome for that sing-along. Then it was back to Broadway, where Groff landed again playing King George in a little production you might have heard of called Hamilton. And again, he was nominated for a Tony Award. My love. Okay, that's enough of that. That is all to say that Groff is extremely talented, unlike some people on this microphone. He is also very much in demand. So why would he want to do a podcast musical? That's one of the questions I asked him in our recent chat about 36 Questions. It's a podcast in musical form, or is it a musical in podcast form? I don't know. And it is based on the New York Times Modern Love essay called To Fall in Love with Anyone, Do This.
Would you like to be famous? In what way?
We're asking 36.
In our chat, Groff and I also did a couple of the famed 36 questions that lead to love. But we didn't do all of them because I didn't want him to fall in love with me. It would only break his heart and probably his spirit. Anyway, here's our conversation with Broadway superstar Jonathan Groff.
Questions tonight. 36, 36, 36, 36.
Jonathan Groff, one of the stars of the podcast 36 Questions. Welcome to The Big Listen.
Oh my God, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
We are thrilled that you are here, taking some time out of your probably busy schedule. I'm guessing that post-Hamilton you are in demand.
Post-Hamilton, God, it's so crazy because I left Hamilton like over a year ago, and I lived in Pittsburgh for a year shooting a TV show that comes out in October. So in some ways, Hamilton feels like a bit of a distant memory, although I just saw it on Broadway a couple of months ago. So I still can't stay away. I'm still very addicted to seeing the show as much as possible.
You and everyone else. So I want to talk about, obviously, the musical podcast, 36 Questions. But first, it is obviously based on this, I don't even know what you would call it, a little experiment, a psychological experiment. Describe the iconic 36 Questions for me.
The 36 Questions to Love is the most, I think it still holds the record as the most read article in the New York Times. And it's this study that psychologists, scientists did, where they said if you could get two people together that have just met, and if they ask each other an honest answer and answer honestly these 36 questions, they will fall in love.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Right. I mean, it has been borne out. Many people have done this and have ended up in relationships. So there's something to it.
Definitely. And I missed this article and I missed this study somehow until this project came along. And I was on a road trip with my friends in a car. And we sort of like lightly went through the questions. We didn't drop all the way in with them. But some of them are obvious. You're like, oh, who would you most want to go to dinner with? And then it gets deeper and more complicated and more, I think, vulnerable as they go along. So it makes sense that you would start to empathize or fall in love with the person that you're talking to, I think, when you ask each other these questions.
Right. I like that you did it in a car, full
Yeah.
of your friends. Like at the end, I mean, you could have all been just like in a 4-person date by the end of it.
Exactly. We have this now we're in this very weird polyamorous relationship since that car ride. It's very strange, but that's the power of the 36 questions.
That would be amazing. So obviously the podcast that you were in, this musical podcast, pivots on these questions. But what was it about doing a musical podcast that appealed to you?
Well, when I saw it was an email that came through my agents, and when I saw in the subject musical podcast, I just found that so interesting because I'd never heard of a musical podcast before. Obviously, I'd heard of musicals and obviously I'd heard of podcasts, but not both at the same time. So that idea intrigued me. And then I met with the producers, and they had produced this podcast called Limetown that was really interesting. And they were talking about how they wanted to break form with the podcast and try something new and different. That excited me. They also spoke to how expensive it is to see a musical and how, you're paying on Broadway $150 a ticket, probably minimum now, to go see a Broadway show. And how wouldn't it be great if we could start a trend of people creating musicals that people could listen to for free in their ears with no charge. So I thought that was exciting. And then Chris and Ellen, who wrote the story and the script and the music and lyrics, they sent me a couple of their songs, and I just thought they were so interesting and beautiful and intriguing. And so all of that combined made me want to jump in.
We'll do this one thing. It is the first thing we're doing together. Since I found out you were not who I thought you were, we'll do this one thing. It could be the last thing.
A lot of folks have tried to make musical podcasts without a ton of success. And I wonder why you think that this particular story works in musical podcast form.
I think part of why it works is the subject matter is about relationships and intimacy, and ultimately it's a conversation between two people. The conceit that you kind of have to just like jump in and go with is that we're recording everything on our phone in the voice memo section. The people in post and the sound designers have done such an incredible job of making it sound like we're outside or we're speaking closely or I'm yelling at her from whatever. They do a whole other like thing with storytelling that's so amazing that I think makes it sound really real.
What was that?
That was the sound of a shelf I just installed, buckling under the weight of 100 books. I was putting... And there goes my grandmother's urn. And... I actually have no idea what that is. Pardon me.
I know I'm not supposed to be asking questions, but your moms are loaded. Couldn't they have hired someone to do all this work on the house?
They don't know.
They don't know you're renovating.
Renovating is such a strong word. Do you smell smoke? Yeah, that's a fire. Just stay calm. Just a small electrical fire. Would you hand me that blanket?
Yeah. For the record, Jace is putting out a fire with what looks like an antique Quaker quilt.
What? Oh, damn it. I thought that was something else. Well, as you can see, your timing, as always, is impeccable.
One thing, Jace. That's all I'm asking for.
I feel like 36 Questions is written specifically for the ear. So I think the way that it's written, you don't actually need to see anything. But I wonder if that changes how you approach it as a performer, because obviously you're performing it in a studio.
Yeah, it's interesting because it doing this whole sort of project, it was kind of like doing camera work, film or TV work, but with your voice, in that it's sort of your duty as an actor to do a million different versions of a million different things, and then you're really at the mercy of the post-production. And so in a lot of ways, like you said, the story, like it's made for the ear. It's not meant to be seen. It's meant to be heard. And yes, of course, part of that is us performing it and being in the moment, Jesse and I being in the moment with each other and trying to be as real as we possibly can and using our imagination and whatnot. But a huge part of the storytelling and the effect and the artistry, I think, of what happens in this podcast happens in the post-production, because it just really blew my mind hearing it, because I was there and I was like, whoa, it sounds like I'm outside. That's so cool.
For you as an actor, do you have to sort of use a different part of your imagination or use more of it when you're doing things like this, where you're in the studio, like Frozen or this musical podcast, 36 Questions, where you don't have the benefit of an audience and you kind of have to create the world in your own head, I imagine?
Yeah. One of the things I love most about it is that the microphone, it's sort of like studio singing and, like you said, recording Frozen, or the microphone, or even just how I'm talking to you right now very closely into this microphone. And if I burp or if I sigh in a weird way, every sort of, it's so exposed. And I remember the first time, because I started in theater, and the first time I did a film, I was in rehearsal with the director, and he said, if you feel it, we'll see it. You don't have to show it to us like you kind of do in the theater to play to the back row. And I find that to be true with voice work, where the minute you start pushing or faking it or like sort of telegraphing something as opposed to feeling something, you can tell. It's so obvious because the microphone so picks up on everything. And so I love the sort of rawness and the intimacy of working with the just the vocal into the microphone storytelling, because it's so exposed. You know, you just have to lose yourself, and then they pick up the pieces and cut it all together. But it's a really fun experience as an actor, because you really get to just let loose and try everything.
But I made a pact with my moms. Under no circumstance should I hear out Natalie. Unlike you, I keep my word, and promises I make become my reality. You like to live your life blurring the lines, bending the rules to make yourself look better. But all that I wanted was something concrete, and to know for a fact you are real.
The songs, to me, as a very terrible singer, they sounded a little complicated.
It took me forever to learn the music.
Okay, so I'm not crazy.
No,
in
you're
thinking
not
that
crazy.
It actually sounded hard.
You're not crazy. And what's so like amazing and incredible and annoying about these composers is that they've written these really intricate things. And I would sort of, in my mind, as I'm learning it, be like, oh, why is it like this? And then, but then when I would learn it, I would understand emotionally exactly why it was that way. So what was annoying about it is you're like, this is so effing hard. And then you're like, but it's because they're so effing smart that they wrote it in this specific, unique way because of the emotional thing that's happening here. It all made sense. Then for me, I just have to like buckle down and do my homework and just shut up and learn the music. I'm a remedial music learner to begin with. So it was that Chris and Ellen would tell you that, you know, I was like, I was having a hard time, but we got there in the end. But yeah, it's very atonal. Ellen was a jazz major at school, so there's like a jazzy element to it. And I love it. I think these composers are so talented, and I believe in them so much, and I love their music. And it really, yes, it was a challenge, but ultimately truly a joy. And it was another reason I wanted to do this podcast musical, because I think of all of these amazing composers that are out there that don't have the money and the funds to put together even a workshop of a musical these days is incredibly expensive to get actors and whatever. And yes, a podcast is expensive, but the idea that new composers can flex their muscles and sing and use their voices and try new things and be daring and be creative is exciting to me. So I want to support that kind of work and that kind of experimentation.
So you said that you had done 36 questions before. Do you think I should ask you some of the 36 questions so that you and I can fall in love?
Of course, obviously.
Oh my God, so great. No, I would like to ask you maybe one of the softball ones because they go from sort of real easy to real
Okay,
hard.
ask me anything.
I
I'm an
think.
open book, Lauren. Go for it.
Oh my gosh. Hey, what would constitute a perfect day for Jonathan Groff?
Oh, that one's really hard to me.
Oh boy.
You're like, I'm already
We
asleep.
failed at the
No.
outset.
That's good. Okay, a perfect day. I'm just gonna say the first thing that comes to my head.
This relationship really doesn't have legs.
Pizza is the first thing that comes to my brain. I don't know why. Maybe because I haven't had pizza in a while. A perfect day would definitely be. Well, I'm a big bike rider, so it would definitely involve some sort of outdoor traveling on a bike. I'm gonna say I'm gonna bike along a beach with someone that I'm in love with. I'm not in love with anyone right now, but just
Right, but you might be in love with me after this. I don't know.
okay.
We'll see.
So you and I are on a bicycle built for two along the boardwalk. And it's sort of like late morning, and so we're on the boardwalk and we're on a bicycle built for two, and we're just sort of talking and getting ready for the day. And then we sort of pull over on our bicycle built for two and have some like breakfast at a little cute cafe. Maybe have a like Bloody Mary or a mimosa. Then we bike along, and there's like the whole beach is there. There's a live band on the beach. And Barbara Streisand circa 1964 is singing old like standards with a 5-piece band.
Down with love, with flowers and rice and shoes. Down with love, the root of all midnight blue.
Love it.
And so we're on the beach and we're just sort of hanging out, and then also like 30 of our closest friends are there. And so we're all sort of like hanging out and we're kind of dancing on the beach, and then there's all this pizza that gets delivered. And so there's all this pizza, we're on the beach, and then we're in the ocean and we're having so much fun. And then
Can't even imagine eating pizza in the ocean.
we are though. That's what we're
but I do-
doing. And there's like an
amazing.
overflowing amount of Diet Coke just like everywhere. And
What?
and we're just
Of all the
losing ourselves in the
beverages,
day.
you're like-
And then it turns into this, and then as it gets to dusk, it turns into this crazy, there's beach volleyball too, by the way. And then there's this like also dance floor on the beach. And then Barbara like goes away, and then the Roots come out.
Yo, lost generation, fast-paced nation, world population come.
And then there's this huge dance party on this giant like stage on the beach. We're still on the beach, and there's like there's like outdoor showers there, so we can like shower and change clothes and
Okay,
stuff.
great.
And then we're dancing on the beach, and then you and I get on our bicycle built for two when the stars come out, and we go back to our little beach house. And then you know what goes down in the beach house after that.
Yeah, no, exactly. I just fall asleep and the bed gets all sandy. So
That you said that,
no,
not
I'm
me.
just kidding. We just gaze into each other's eyes and do more 36 questions.
Yeah. And then like make passionate love until the sun comes out.
Ooh. My producer just shook her head and basically walked out. She's like, nope, this can't happen. You know, people are going to be really, really jealous out there that we just had this day together. So I'm going to ask you a slightly more intimate 36 questions question, which is, Jonathan Groff, when was the last time you cried in front of another person? And when was the last time you cried by yourself?
The last time I cried in front of another person was like yesterday while singing these songs from this concert that I'm doing at the Hollywood Bowl. These like Sondheim songs.
Most friends fade or they don't make the grade. New ones are quickly made and in a pinch sure they'll do. But us, old friend, wants to discuss, old friend, here's to us, who's like us.
All of us that are doing the cast is amazing. And we've gotten along so well, and we all have that kind of like nerdy love for the material that we're doing. And so we've all kind of like cried together in certain moments over the past couple of days.
Aww. Well, that's real sweet.
And the last time I cried by myself, when was that? That's a really good question. I think I was watching a movie in bed. Just like, I think also a couple of days ago. But what was I watching?
Right.
I can't remember in this moment what I was watching, but I remember just like losing it.
Kung Fu Panda?
Definitely wasn't Kung Fu Panda. I've never seen Kung Fu Panda,
just wondering.
actually. What was I watching?
Me neither.
I cry a lot while watching or reading. Like reading books, I'll cry, or watching films, I'll cry, and then in the theater, I often cry a lot. But I don't cry often in like real life.
Oh, yeah. No, I hear that. I cry in the theater all the time, but I don't cry reading books. I don't know why. I cry on planes, actually, mostly.
Wait, I think that's what it was. Yes, you just reminded me. It was not in my. It was not in my bed. It was on the plane on the way to LA watching When Harry Met Sally. I lost it.
Oh, of course, because Harry Met Sally, and also because of the altitude.
Totally.
Really does
Oh my
mess
God,
with your
every time in the plane.
emotions.
It was when she was like, it was at the end at the New Year's Eve party when he comes up to her.
Yeah.
You know, she says something like, "You make me like you," or so. What is her line at the end there?
Yeah.
That is just like you, Harry. You say things like that and you make it impossible for me to hate you.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
I lost it.
Okay. I'm glad to know that you can summon tears, because not everybody can. So.
Oh my
that's
God, I
healthy,
cry all the
think.
time. I actually went to see back to Barbra Streisand. I went to go see her in concert in Brooklyn.
Obviously.
I'm obsessed. I'm in a real like deep. It's a deep obsession in this moment. And I took my friend and I kind of drug my friend, and he was like, "Okay, I'll go with you. I'll go with you because I know how much you want to see her, so of course I'll go with you." And I'm on the edge of my seat for the whole concert. And at the end, she's singing "Happy Days Are Here Again," and I look over at him and I was like, "Are you crying?" And he was crying at the Barbra Streisand concert.
Happy days are here again. The skies above are clear again.
Jonathan Groff is one of the stars of the podcast musical 36 Questions from Two Up Productions. To find out more about the show, check out biglisten.org. And to hear he and I sing a little duet in an upcoming episode, be sure to subscribe to The Big Listen on Apple Podcasts or NPR One or wherever you get your podcasts.
Shout it